Hello, my curious viewer. If you're interested in this sea of blinking lights and generative music, I could explain what all of this is about. I guess that if you click it on this video, then at least you are curious, even if you're scared. I'm not a native speaker, sorry for my English. I want to run through this patch. I built it myself. This is if you don't know, this is a free software called VCV Rack 2 that you can download and try to build something like that. It includes, you're downloading from other sources, a lot of other modules that you are supposed to choose for yourself. You can look at what solutions I found for myself, or you can suggest, because in this modular world, there's always another way to build something that you might like. So if you know an interesting, curious solution to a problem I've encountered here, I would love to hear it. And this is not an engagement tactic, I'm simply interested. So, why build it? This is all generated on the fly. All the sounds are synthesized and the sequences are generated. There is no samples and there is no like MIDI that I wrote, and it evolves, if you didn't notice yet. It changes over time. So, I guess kind of speaks for itself. It's kind of cool. The question is, why build this? Here's a button. Why do this? Why don't you just go and write a track for yourself and use samples? And why do you waste your time? Well, maybe you're curious, maybe you're an enthusiast, these are obvious, but if you create music professionally like I do, or teach professionally like I do, these things help you solidify your understanding of how the sounds work, and also, I must admit it, the major one for me was curiosity, that's for sure. So I like to try and make things gel and sound like they're coherent while not having complete access to the tools that I usually have access to. Fair warning, if you are going to use that many tools and tweak the sound to this decent, I would say, translatable state, you would need a very good CPU. This time there is no working around it, no magical chips, because here it is. This is a 16-core Ryzen CPU that is goes up to 5 gigahertz, and still it is pretty heavy on it. I am recording right now, and my voice processing also takes a little bit of it, but yeah. So this is not a complete tutorial. We're not going to build it from the ground up. I am, however, going to explore and explain a lot of different things that this patch is built with. So feel free to skip, and I'm going to give you a high-level explanation and then go into the details. So this is again more of a running through the idea than teaching you how to build this completely. Although I am not giving you the patch, and I count on you trying to build something like that. Okay, so this is what we have. Doesn't look too complex if you wrote a bunch of tracks before. A lead, one simple note, playing from time to time, a hat pattern, a bass pattern consisting of simply one note all the time, and the kick. So pretty straightforward, I would say. And also we have sends, a longer one, a shorter delayed one, and this drony one created from the bass. But in order to build all this in this infrastructure, you have to think of different things, and they all are passed through these cables, which is unusual, at least for me, who's very used to doing music in DAWs. So, things you have to think about, let me keep it playing in the background, are, so the high-level idea is, first you need to create a structure of rhythm, if this is going to be more resemblant of mainstream-ish music, and not just generative thing that drones in the background and has no structure. Then you create, so in this structure you have to think of parts, so something that emits signals to play notes and specifies the pitches, if that's applicable. And then you think of the sounds themselves. Some of these modules create basically on the fly, synthesize the thing I want to hear, and then you mix. So using that high-level thinking, let's see how this is created here. To explain what is going on in these cables, I'm going to use a module called scope a lot in this explanation. So, in short, everything that is in these cables, it just presented in one way, voltage. Something jumps up and down, like this. However, you can plug everything to everything, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to give you meaningful results. And this is not because the formats are somehow incompatible. Again, this is all a single format that is passed through the cables. Instead, what is incompatible is maybe the data range that it uses, how basically far up or down it goes. If you can hear it, so it fluctuates fast enough and it's at audio rates, what you are used maybe seeing on your equalizer, like 40 hertz, 200 hertz, so that many times a second it fluctuates. Then you're going to hear it, and then the modulation, if you plug it in, the modulation is going to be very, very fast, bordering on synthesis already. And the opposite, if it's too slow, you're not going to hear it, even if you're going to plug it into this thing that emits the sound to me and then to you right now. Yeah, so all the cables are created equal, almost. And things that are passed for different reasons, like note triggers, so telling a thing to play a note, or time, or pitch, things like that. They are all kind of devised in the same way, but you have to basically know what your module, every single one that you're using, expects as an input or produces as an output. And then you are at least guaranteed to see how it works as intended, and then you can plug anything into that and see what happens, basically. Okay, enough of basicallys. Let's start the rundown. So how does it work? There's this thing called clock. This is the beating heart of the speed of this track. If I tweak it, I can demonstrate that. It's going to change the speed. Sounds easy enough, right? Like this. No problem. But, see, different modules, they care about different things in the bar. For example, my hi-hats are on the 16th grid, so they care about 16th notes. Some things happen very rarely, like they happen maybe once in a 4-bar period. Some things care about the bar progressing. So, for example, my sequence of the background melody needs to know when we are in the middle of the bar or in the late stages of the bar, preferably exactly. So for that, we have two different formats of time in VCV Rack. One is called simply clock or triggers most of the time, like this, and it outputs a tick. When I was starting out, I was trying to figure out, is this a one beat? Is this one bar? Is it actually it's whatever you decide it to be, and it simply tells a certain module to do a thing. Maybe play a note, maybe advance one step in the sequencer, maybe switch to the next knob. It's simply a signal. It doesn't care. It doesn't carry an inherent meaning. Okay, so knowing that, we can use that to emit our 16th notes. Let me give you an example. So this is a sequencer that decides, one of those anyway, that decides when the hi-hats play. One of these strings, I think the first one, is the pattern for our hi-hats. Let me look it up. Yeah, this one. So in order to step to the next section of the grid, it uses this signal. Look at this. It gets the click, so clock. And I made sure that the frequency at which this thing pulses is my 16th note. If I do this, it now only advances once an 8th note. Okay, so easy enough. And also, if you did maybe notice that it was like jumping back, let me show you again, like this. This is because it receives a reset signal once in a while. Reset basically says reset, right? Says just don't care about what state you were before, immediately jump at the start. That, again, very much depends on whatever module you're using. Like Cardinal, a free fork that you could use in your DAW, comes with 1,300 something modules. So getting very stuffy with this is comparatively easy. Okay, so this is one basically version of advancing time. Triggers. Another one is called phaser, or simply phase. You can see this output here. And it looks very different. Like this. It's a line that goes up. And goes up in a certain, again, you decide. It might be 1/4, it might be one bar, it might be one cycle of the waveform of the pitch that you are synthesizing. But they all simply say that a cycle of some usefulness to you started here and ended here. There are different ranges, but usually this range from 0 voltage to whatever, 10, 5, I don't remember, it doesn't matter. And if you simply plug it in here, it's not going to work because this module, as it says on the tin, expects the clicks here. So something is going to happen. It's not going to break, but it's not going to work properly. See? Does not advance anymore. This is me, was me mouse scrolling. Okay. I plugged it in back with the Control-Z with the undo function. So, and you can see I have a bunch of modules that look kind of similar. They're called dividers, and that means that they receive, say, a signal that pulses 1/4 of a time, like this. And you can see that it's plugged into a divider that says 4:1. That means it's now going to output a phaser of 1 bar, like this. They can get desynchronized, so we can plug a reset output into reset input and say send a manual trigger to reset. Maybe you would like to do it automatically on the loading of your patch before you perform. You might have like a separate button. Again, a million ways to skin the cat. So these are two things that kind of keep my patch consistent. For example, the head does not really care how many bars are we into the thing. At least not the beating heart of the oscillator itself and the rhythm composition of it. But if you would like to make maybe the filter on the head progress through 16 bars, then phasers become really important because they tell you precisely where exactly are you in the time compared to clocks that are unable, as you saw, to tell you that. But if you cannot yourself by the visuals tell, then the machine also cannot. So this is simply a click. We don't know if this is the 4th click or the 100th click. There's no way to tell, basically. So you have to practice to make it work for yourself. It's not easy to get this thing. But I highly recommend you do, especially if you want to, what I do all the time, synchronize your VCV Rack 2 or Cardinal. VCV Rack 2 inside your DAW is paid. This is free. Inside your DAW is paid. But Cardinal is free. And I use it all the time with my students and also with people who are not interested in modular synths, but still we find uses for it. Randomization, creative effects, different things like that. Big selection of effects too in one box. So I highly recommend you look into Cardinal. So you have to practice, as with many things like that. But once you get a hold of it, phasers are really useful when you are syncing your patch with your DAW. I did skip it for a long while, and now I regret it. I made many mistakes in my patch building path, but I guess that's normal. So now we look into different instruments we have, gradually building from the easy to the hard. Kick. I guess most of you understand that building a kick pattern is not hard. It's basically 1/4, and our clock already emits a pulse exactly like that. So we go into here, this triggers the sound. This is a module from Auting called Stomp. It simply synthesizes the kick, and it uses the method of a sine going down in pitch and some saturation on top and some click on top, which I turned off because I don't like this, edgy sound and multiple transients. I don't use that very often, and especially in here it sounded very digital, but that may be because I already equalized it. So it goes out of here basically ready. You can tweak the pitch like this, but you can tweak everything in this patch on the fly or via the macros, that doesn't matter. All what comes together is mixing, so we're not going to look there. This is the easiest thing in the world. You can create your kick in a very involved way with a resonator. You can use a sample, whatever. I like this method because it enables me to then double check when the starting attack of the sound makes it through the track, but not too much, because when it makes it through too much, it can sound very clicky. And if you listen to the previous version of the patch, before I mixed everything on the same channel, the previous video, it sounds very clicky and not enough bass comes from the bass, so then it doesn't gel together. And this is not like a compression question or a saturation question. Instead, it's just your mixing quality question and the harmonics coming through, things like that. So yeah, this is the kick. Head also is pretty easy. You can use this free module. Every module here is free, none is paid. So I'm going to stop making this caveat. This is what it's called. And you can create two different types of heads, closed and open. They are going to choke each other automatically. You can output raw oscillators from there. What does outputting raw oscillators mean? This is just a straight up, never stopping sound, and you are supposed to shape it yourself. But in here, usually these types of combined modules that are not requiring you to create a separate module for your envelope that you apply somewhere, a separate module to control the volume, a separate module for a filter, a separate module for your oscillator, like my leads and basses are made up here. But here you're just getting the sound. And usually they give you the option to still use the oscillators, but if you want, if you'd like, you just get the thing itself. Here it is. Let me solo it back like this. Yeah, easy enough. So as we discussed before, I used this pattern in the first demo video of mine, and then I decided to, switch it up a little bit and use the sequencer. I used a very, very small amount of its capabilities, but it's good enough. So we're done with the drums at this point. This might sound ridiculous for a track that sounds okay as the complete thing, but in general, you don't want to be very, very wet in this style of sound. You are keeping a couple of your layers very crisp and dry, and then you create the front row and the back row, and that creates the 3D illusion, so to speak. Last note, my hat is auto-panned like this, if you did mention. And this is created with a very chaotic modulator that you're going to encounter through this patch. This is a bigger version. This is a compact version of the same thing. A little bit different functionality. Very, very fun module, not very hard on the CPU. Basically, it emits a random signal. You even saw something like that in my first demonstration of scope. And you yourself specify how fast or slow it goes, like this, and you tell it how much of a attraction does it have to the middle or the low part or the high part of the signal range, and you specify the signal range, which all is very useful when you are, so to speak, designing your randomness. So sometimes it sounds a bit off, but mostly this allows you to have your hat just a little bit more in your face, because when things are close to you, they're supposed to be wide. If the thing isn't wide, it's not close to you, just simply loud. I mean, in terms of audio perception. I know it's a fast and general rule, but it works. So let's go on and look at the bass. This is the first tonal instrument of the bunch. We have 3 of them. The bass is this. So this is built in a very, very classical way. It looks scary. This is all my bass, I think. Yeah, but it's easy enough when you look into it. So they all play this note, just the F. These modules constantly output the correct voltage to that be an F. If I'm not going to change it up or modulate, I could simply type this exact voltage that I see here on a empty knob like this. Like I'll just put minus whatever here and plug it out, and it's going to work. But in here, not only it's comfortable for me to try different octaves fast and different root notes, but also I'm mixing up, well, not now, mixing in this dirt into the pitch. I cannot tell myself, honestly. Maybe it's oversaturated, and that's why we cannot tell. But I then use 2 oscillators. So oscillators in this world means that they just constantly output the sound. If I were to plug this in, it would just sound like just one note playing over and over. So we're not getting into the weeds here. It uses 2 oscillators. One of them is synced to another, and they change shape on the fly using the module that you're already familiar with, that is plugged into everything. And then there's this combination of a filter and a envelope that jumps over the bass that always goes on and on and on, and makes it acidish, creates the sound of the envelope going down, the resonance, etc., etc. And then this scary part is actually, you can consider that mixing or timbre building. You combine different gains, equalizers, distortions, and filters again. So basically, you get this kind of stale sound first. It's a little bit, I don't know what it's gonna sound, so sorry if it's gonna be too loud. Okay, it's the opposite. You gain it, you equalize it. Right now it doesn't make much sense, right? But it's going to change a lot with the distortions. This is a 10 distortion, this is another type of distortion that does not disclose what exactly does it use. And also once you get a very, maybe overdriven, maybe not very, but overdriven sound, you kind of filter it out again, and this enables the gritty texture that you've heard before. These are simply equalizers, 4-band equalizers. These are filters, very good filters, and polyphonic as well. That means that if you want to create a synth that plays chords, not just one note, you still can use that. Unfortunately, they are not in cardinal, but they are free. They are from the company called Volt. If you see this type of font, type of design, this is Volt. And also this envelope is from them. You can open VCV library and Google the names, and you'll absolutely find them. So this is the bass. Comes out like this. And you can tell that it kind of squelches differently, it becomes shorter, it becomes longer. If we trace every randomization module that we have in this section, in this corner of the patch, and disable it, it's going to become completely straight. Not it, but them. I disabled a couple, doesn't matter. So this is not much, but this creates the movement also. We're not triggering every note again, because of the same idea as we employed for the hats. It may sound very chaotic, but once it's stabilized with the kick, it's fine. See? Works fine. You can tell where you're supposed to nod your head, you know what I'm saying? So lead is pretty similar. It employs a little bit of a different technique to create the pattern though, because it creates different notes. So there's this module called Fluencerator. Again, it's not sound itself. It's just, if you want to think about it that way, it's like your MIDI part, more or less. This says which pitch are we playing, and this says when are we starting the note and ending with the note. If we don't use this one, it's just going to sound like a completely legato, not broken up sound. And then you are supposed to plug this into oscillators and filters and saturators, etc., to again make it work and create a timbre, not just listen to a very plain sound. So in here, again, I randomize a couple of things. If you want to call that randomization, I would say it's a controlled randomization. So I know, how far I push a certain parameter, and I also choose the parameters, and they tend to get back to the center. So all these things happen to help to keep the patch under control. Also, I randomize the octaves of the output. If I disable it like this, it becomes considerably more stale. This short sound is created with a very short pluck that you create on both the volume here and on the filter here. Without it, it's gonna be loud. There we go. Made it just in time. This is how harsh the sound is at the source. You're going to get used to it if you are not. There we go. So it cuts off so much in terms of time and spectrum from the source, that you get this, very gentle type of sound, and you basically need maybe a more bright source for that, because then you are able to create a starting point of the sound, a little pluck. Let's get back to the randomness of it all. We are almost done. The last thing I did, I was going to make it a chord and didn't make it work just yet. Ignore these gray modules. because they are disabled to basically making it bypass, but they're pretty useful. They clone one gate or one trigger or one whatever to however many channels you tell it for a polyphonic cable. We did not touch on polyphonic cables yet, but we're going to. Okay, so this is the sound. It's not going to be here all the time. There it is. It happens automatically, but very rarely. So we randomize here. I didn't talk about that. Fluencerator can, sorry, I'm getting back to the lead. Fluencerator can create a sequence, and it's in the given mode of a given tonic of a given length of clocks. So again, it doesn't know about fourths or 16th. It knows about how many times you nudge it, basically. You can nudge it linearly like I do. You can do it randomly, and it will sound way less organized. Can add glides, it can add accents, but you yourself have to then make it work and explain what an accent is. In my case, accents are longer notes and releases, things like that. But you can press this button and get a different sequence with the same rules. And it has a plug for itself, so you can just send a trigger and it's going to happen automatically. So that's what I do, as you can see, for my head sequence, for my bass sequence, just the rhythm, not the sound itself. And in here, so this lead basically stays the same inside the windows of these randomizations. Some of them you see visually, some of them you don't. All the different software creators created its modules, remember? But that enables me kind of moving through parts. Maybe it's the laziest idea to organize your randomization. You could also create kind of transitions. For that, you need to count time again, mute some modules, maybe through a switch, and plug some others in. You would use something like this that kind of can go through two different states. It can just respond to the button being held or pressed once, like this. Polyphonic, again, very useful if you know what polyphonic means in the VCV Rack 2 context. Okay, so now we can safely move on from Fluencerator. This is my kind of phrasal sequencer in and of itself. There's no sequencer outside. It's kind of making all it work inside. I like it very much for these kinds of patches when I'm testing things and building things up, and it plays something that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, I simply press this button and wait until it does. Okay, let's get back to the swell. The swell is this sound. There we go. This one. So basically, it's very easy. Once in a blue moon, it outputs a trigger like this into this synth, and when the trigger is created, we're passing it through what's called sample and hold modules, S&H says right there. Modern sample and hold modules don't require you to create a noise source, and then there they basically make it all work. Once you press, you get a random value. So every time you get this trigger, you get another random value. And that's, if I just plugged this into the patch of the Prodigal Son, which creates the that you hear, it's not going to make sense because it's going to play like basically completely random pitch, even outside your basic 12-note separation. It's going to be random. I don't know, E plus 13 cents. So it doesn't make sense. But you use quantizers for that. You pass this green cable through it and tell which notes to keep, which to omit. And also this particular quantizer I'm going to use more later. Didn't use it before. It's very comfortable because it has this option to transpose the random signal. See, if I don't do that, I'll get a piercing high pitch sometimes and an incredibly low pitch sometimes. So it becomes very hard to organize the voices, right? It is random, but it's not kind of organized. It's very easy to create randomness in general, and especially here. Your job is to create the beauty from the chaos, not just use the chaos as it is. So this is one of the very, very useful and simple utilities to create this order you just tell where the note goes at the lowest and at the highest. Basically, that's not what these knobs mean. But if you test it like that, you can then be sure that it's in the range. See, I combine two things. I combine a trigger that my patch emits automatically, and I use also a manual trigger because I have to mix, I have to test the sends, etc., etc. Okay, I have about 10 minutes to tell you about the rest of the patch, so I'm going to do my best. This is a very interesting and a bit complicated mixer. If you are new to all this, I would recommend you use this instead. This is these are the same. Very easy to use and modular mixers and expanders. Expanders, modules that have a tag expander, mean that they basically require some sort of a father module, and then they create extra functionality on top of the module that you are discussing. So in this case, for example, you route your signals in there, you pan them, you get them different volumes, and you can get your stereo mix. But if you need more, you have this simple 3-band equalizers, and you also can get sends and returns. Sends mean that you get a copy of a sound, show it to a reverb or a delay, and that gets the results of the delay back into the mix. And these are the powers with which you are sending different instruments. This is a concept that is very useful if you're going to do live sound, if you've never looked at a actual mixer, not in your DAW, but in real life, you would find that this is the way they do things. If it's not completely digital, in box, then it might resemble your, effects chain in your DAW. So why is this? It's a little bit more heavy on CPU, but it has a lot of functions that this previous mixer didn't. So that's why I tried to use it. I am very satisfied. This is a smaller version, actually. It has a bigger one as well. And with different expansions, I am able to, first of all, create stereo inputs before in Mix 4X. If you are using this, Mix 8, Mix 4, if you have a stereo output like my Super Saw, like this, the swell, you have to use 2 inputs and manually pan them. And then when you control it, it's uncomfortable because you have to set the values. So you get a different volume knob. Becomes a hassle. And also still takes up 2 of your inputs. Has stereo inputs. Very, very nice. If it's mono, it propagates to the second channel. If it's stereo, you hear both. Amazing. Different kind of modulations, built-in low-pass and high-pass filters. Again, very useful. I know that in a DW, this is like, duh. You can very easily just get your Pro Q3 out and do whatever. But in here, it's not that easy. Usually with the cabling and all the different modules, it becomes a mess and hard to control. And if all you need is a little cut on the head, this time it's a high cut, not a low cut, then it's very accessible to you right here and even has a visual indication. You can rename the tracks. If you teach them to look at each other, expander must sit right next to it or the expansion stops working like this. See, my sense broke. Equalizer knows about this module with a different magic. You right click and you set link to mixer. This is the name of your mixer. But this enables you to actually rearrange the channels. You can reposition them left and right. Just tell it to switch 4 to 1, 1 to 4, and every other module knows about it. It knows to replace the sends. This knows to replace the EQ tracks. So one word about this powerful equalizer. It's only for bands, but it's not about bands. It's about channels. It can receive in this thick polyphonic cable everything that goes into the mixture. It's combined, and before it's going to your master, it goes there, becomes equalized. Whatever you say, see, it picked up the names that I specified myself from here, and then it gives it back. And if you'd like, you can chain them, which I tested, because for some tracks I needed more, specific things that I used up my bands on the kick, so now I need a couple more. There you go. It's a bit expensive on the CPU, but if you need precision and if you need visual representation, if you are mixing for clarity and translatability, I did test this mix on actual real phones and the real setups to make it work nicely for YouTube, more or less. So this is what immensely helps with that. Do not underestimate your simple EQ. It's not that simple, especially when you're dealing with sounds that are either pretty narrow, like your kick, or very wideband, like your bass, or your lead, especially before you kind of equalize it yourself. So these are making great sense for me. I use this as an equalizer, this as an equalizer, but these are the sounds themselves, and whatever you heard when I began the tutorial, they are enabling me to get way more stereo and even create this kind of fake pads in the background, atmospheres. This is just one single module that combines all the things that Chris from Air Windows have created. I guess you might be familiar at this point, but if you aren't, Google it. He created a lot of different effects, and it's very, very easy to use in here. I didn't test the modulation. I wouldn't be surprised if sometimes it breaks, because I don't think anyone tested all the modulations on literally hundreds of different effects. But usually people use things like plateau for their reverbs and delays. It's very popular, it's pretty powerful as well, but it is very CPU hungry. And if I used only that, I would be, I think, out of luck in terms of mixing. But in here, as you've heard before, have something that is kind of close, like this. Let me enable the hat for you to hear. This little tingles in the stereo, they do make a difference. So I like to layer multiple sounds. One that is more wide and long, one that is kind of short and maybe delayed, maybe roomish. And that creates, if you are careful with that, what I was sending and at what power, that creates more of a depth perception at the end of the day. So these main pads are that. Galactic 3, also chorus piled up on top in parallel, not in serial, so they both get a same set of cables as you can see. So then I equalize them. That's to your taste, not exactly necessary, but I did find it necessary. And let's run through the mixing plugins in short. This is a 8-band equalizer, fixed, a little bit too resonant to my taste, but I did test it. It's fine. It's not polyphonic, but it is stereo. Okay. This is polyphonic, I think, which is very nice, but it's only 4 bands, but it has variable Q, which is very useful. If you use this default Q of 1 or even more narrow Q, it becomes very, very hard to mix. So I found these filters too narrow, too resonant. When it is wider, it's easier to create sweeping changes, which is what we need. Then before you hear everything, it comes through this. This is my stereo output from the mixture, but before you hear it, this is my basically master section. It goes through that and then through this, I think. So that means that we are adding more side, creating more stereo. I don't usually do that when I mix professionally. I try to get it from the source, because then you get monocompatibility problems. Sometimes it doesn't become worse, but it does not become better either. So your mix can become shallow or narrow, or whatever word you want to use for kind of fake stereo that is always wide and never beautiful. But then it kind of gained down and DC filtered and saturated with this very simple one knob tube from Moskva or Mogba, whatever you want to say. Then it's gained back. Pre-gain is very important, because this distortion responds to gain a lot differently, and then you get it back into this the end of the patch. You equalize a little bit more. Then optionally, I tried this thing. It's supposed to be like a channel or console limiter. Uses 4 different ways of going about it. As this is a very good compressor, by the way. 4 different compressors. This is 4 different quote-unquote limiters. They're not as transparent as I like them to be, but you're not using them for transparency. You're using them for color, which again I usually don't do on my master bus, but in this case, so little. Such a small count of instruments, so it makes more sense. Makes more sense. I gained more highs at the end of the chain. I also tried clipping, but as usual, I try it and then I back it off because it sounds dirty to me. So this is what this air does. I'm not using it as I'm supposed to because it's supposed to be used with 44.1K and I'm using it at 48K. But anyway, it's fine. I like the first version of it, got used to the sound of it. There are different other things to use. You can just type air and in the brightness folder, you'll find a lot of different things that create different colors of, let's say, brightness, as it says on the tin. Different experimental filters that Chris likes to mess around with. So how do I finish it up? Another one fancy thing that I used is this. This is an all-pass filter. If you don't know what it is, it's now used widely in electronic mixing and sound design, but in here it's very, very subtle. Creates a slight wash on the hat and a slight wash on the kick. So if you will listen very carefully once I shut up, you'll hear that they are now a little bit too rigid, and on some systems that can come through as raw and harsh. It's not like a reverb per se, but you can think in that direction. It's kind of blurred, just a little bit, but you can make it very, very blurry if you like, if the sound calls for it, but be careful with the low sounds. You can create a very, very long doom on the kick, which then completely messes up the whole mix. It eats up too much of your amplitude. You cannot solve this with sidechain because you just are not supposed to have this long of a tail on the kick. So what are you gonna do? You're going to remove all your bass just through the whole track because your kick is that long? That doesn't make sense. Sometimes it does, but usually in the tracks where you don't have the low bass, you have like kind of a mid-rangey low note, but equalized from the bottom, so it doesn't have these sub frequencies. So they don't fight, they don't clash at all. This way, some of the minimal house things, doom, 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 they are made with a very long internal kick that is basically, it becomes the bass at this point. So, I think we covered, at least in broad strokes, the most of it. So, again, from top to bottom, you need to create a clock. You need to take different pulses from it and adapt it to whatever instrument you're using. For example, if you're using a hat, it only makes sense to use the clock to just drive it through the whole track like this, especially when you're starting out. This is very easy. You don't get any variation, any control, but you are up and running in seconds. Some things like advancing through a bar pattern. And there are sequencers that are built exactly for that. You can Google, you can search for, I'm so used to saying Google instead of search. For example, you can use something like this. This is also a sequencer of voltages and triggers, but it goes through the steps with a phaser, not with a clock. So it knows exactly where it's supposed to go. Also in this patch, I tried to do a dirty clock. So I mix just a little bit of randomness into it. If I bump it, it's just 1%. If I bump it up, it's going to completely break in an interesting way. The bass is a bit messy because it's a bit long and oversaturated as it is, and when it becomes faster, then it's breaking. But the straight line becomes this messy, noisy thing, and I wanted to see what it it would enable me to do. You can also reverse and freeze and stutter with the phasers. I did not experiment much with it, but there are even modules built exactly for that, but you can also do it manually if you understand your basic math and logical operations inside VCV. So, if you found any of that interesting, you download VCV Rack 2 for free and not expect me to create any type of thorough video anytime soon, but you can subscribe anyway. This channel is my chill out channel. I don't do anything serious here. I just wanted to talk, so that's why I recorded this video. That's basically the reason. Again, I apologize for the broken English. I tried my best, but maybe I didn't get as much practice in as last year. I can tell myself that my mouth is not used to making these sounds and I struggle to find the right sentence, but I hope it was clear. So yeah, the subject is pretty difficult to get a grasp on at first, but you just need to practice. Just pick whatever screenshot from this patch and try to recreate it one by one, then explain the logic, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. I was fine. I was a bit lost at first, but now I'm fine. So good luck. Have fun.